I found out I wasn't my parents' real daughter the night before my sister's wedding. And honestly, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was realizing they'd known all along. They'd always known, and they chose her anyway. Let me back up a second, because this is wild, and you need to understand how I got here. I'm Alina, 25, living in a shoebox apartment in downtown Austin, scraping by on freelance graphic design gigs that barely cover rent. My older sister, Sophia, she's 28, senior partner at a law firm in Dallas, engaged to a guy whose family owns half the oil wells in West Texas. She's everything our parents ever wanted. And me, I'm the disappointment. That's literally how my mom introduced me to her church friends once. This is Alina, well, she's trying. But that dinner changed everything. We were sitting around the table, eating Mom's brisket, and Dad raised his glass to toast Sophia. Again, he said, and I quote, "You're the epitome of success. Everything we hoped for in a daughter." In a daughter. Not in our daughters. Not we're proud of both of you. Just her. Mom chimed in about Sophia's engagement ring, about her fiancé's connections, about the legacy they were building. Then she turned to me with this. "Look, you know the one." Pity mixed with disappointment. "And Alina, sweetie, we're just glad you're trying. But honestly, you're not half the woman your sister is." Something inside me snapped. And what I found out later that night, it explained everything. So here's the thing about growing up as the other daughter. You notice everything. Like how Sophia got piano lessons and I got her hand-me-down keyboard when she quit after 2 months. How family vacations were planned around her debate tournaments, her college visits, her career milestones. How Dad would brag about her to anyone who'd listen, and when people asked about me, he'd just change the subject. I used to think I was being sensitive. You know, like maybe I was just jealous or insecure or whatever. But that night at dinner, when Mom said I wasn't half the woman Sophia was, I realized, no, this was real. This was a pattern. This was my entire life. I didn't cry, didn't yell. I just stood up, pushed my chair back. It made this horrible screech across the floor, and I said, "You're right. I'm not half the woman she is. Maybe that's because I've been too busy being twice the person you never bothered to see." Then I walked out. Sophia had this little smirk on her face as I left, like she'd won something. Again. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel before I could even turn the key. Drove down I-35 with tears blurring the highway lights, not really sure where I was going. Just away. When I got home, and I use that word loosely because my apartment's basically a glorified closet, I poured myself the cheapest wine I owned and opened my laptop. I don't know what I was looking for exactly. Maybe old photos, proof that they loved me once, something to make sense of why I was always the afterthought. I scrolled through our shared family cloud drive. Birthdays at the Alamo, Christmas in the Hill Country, Sophia front and center in every single shot, me off to the side or cropped out entirely or just not there. Then I saw it. A folder buried in subfolders, labeled Old Docs. Password protected. Now I'm not normally the snooping type, but something told me to try. I typed in Mom's birthday, the one date she made sure everyone remembered because it was her day, and it opened. Inside were scans of legal documents, old ones, from like 20 years ago. Adoption papers. My heart started racing. But here's the thing. Sophia wasn't the one they adopted. I was. I stared at that screen for I don't know how long. The document had my name. Well, not Alina, apparently that came later. But there was my birth date, clear as day. Born in Oklahoma City. Adopted by Victor and Lydia Martinez when I was 3 months old. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped my wine glass. So let me get this straight. I'm the adopted one. They chose me, literally went through an entire process to bring me into their family, and somehow I still ended up being the reject. I kept scrolling through the files, my stomach twisting tighter with each page. There were medical records from the adoption agency, forms signed by my birth mother, name redacted, and then emails, recent ones, from the past 6 months. Between Dad and Sophia. Subject line, trust fund distribution. I clicked it open, even though part of me knew I shouldn't, that whatever was in there would hurt. And oh man, did it. Dad's email read, "We've decided to restructure the family trust. Given Alina's instability and lack of direction, we believe it's best to allocate the majority to you. You've proven yourself." She hasn't. This is funded by your grandfather's Oklahoma holdings, and it should go to someone who will honor that legacy. Sophia's response, "Thanks, Dad. I think that's wise. She's never really been family material anyway." Family material. I had to read it 3 times before it sank in. They weren't just cutting me out of the inheritance, some trust funded by Grandpa's old oil money that I barely knew about. They were erasing me. And Sophia, perfect golden Sophia, agreed with them, encouraged it even. The adoption thing was one betrayal, but this was calculated, cold, like they'd been planning it, discussing it behind my back while I sat at their dinner table pretending we were a family. I slammed my laptop shut and just sat there in my tiny apartment, surrounded by rejection letters from design firms and unpaid invoices, and I thought, when did I become so easy to throw away? Then something else hit me. The adoption papers mentioned Oklahoma City. The trust was funded by Oklahoma Oil Holdings. Why did that feel connected? I opened the laptop again, hands steadier now, anger replacing the shock. If they could have secrets, so could I. Time to find out who I really was. I called in sick the next morning, which was a joke because freelancers don't get sick days, you just lose money. But I didn't care. I had to know. The adoption agency's address was right there in the documents. Some office in Oklahoma City, about 3.5 hours north. I threw some clothes in a bag, grabbed my laptop, and hit the road before I could talk myself out of it. The drive gave me too much time to think. Like, what kind of people adopt a baby and then treat her like a consolation prize? Was I that disappointing from day one? Did they take one look at infant me and think, "Hey, she'll do until we get a real one"? Because that's what it felt like. Sophia wasn't adopted. She came along 2 years after me. The miracle baby they actually wanted. Their biological child. The one who got all the love and attention and investment while I got leftovers. Subscribe now because what I found out next. It's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about family. The adoption agency was in a sad little strip mall next to a tax place and a pawn shop. Real depressing. Inside, it smelled like old coffee and copy paper. The receptionist was this older woman, Gladys, according to her name tag. She looked up when I walked in, and I must have looked as unhinged as I felt because she immediately asked if I was okay. "I need information about my adoption," I blurted out. "From 2001, I have the case number." Her face softened. "Honey, you're gonna need ID and—" I already had my driver's license out. "Please, I just found out yesterday. I need to know where I came from." She studied me for a long moment, then sighed and typed something into her ancient computer. "Your parents never told you." "They told me a lot of things," I said. "Turns out most of them were lies." Gladys printed some papers, then paused, looked at me again. "This was a closed adoption, very closed, but your birth mother left something for you, for when you turned 18. My heart stopped. "What?" She disappeared into a back room and came back with a manila envelope. Yellowed. Sealed. My name, well, my adopted name, written on the front in careful handwriting. "I remember this case," Gladys said quietly. "Your birth mother was 17, from a wealthy family up in Tulsa. Her parents forced the adoption. She cried the whole time." I couldn't breathe. I took the envelope to my car before opening it, hands shaking so bad I almost ripped it. Inside was a single letter on expensive stationery. "Dear daughter, my name is Rebecca Harlan. I was 17 when I had you, and my parents gave me no choice. They forced me to give you up, said I was too young, that it would ruin the family name. But I want you to know, I never wanted to let you go. You come from the Harlan family. Oil, land, legacy going back generations. That's your birthright. Not theirs to take, mine to give. When you're ready, find me. I've been waiting. I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you, but you're a Harlan. Don't ever forget that. A phone number was written at the bottom, with a Tulsa area code. I just sat there in that parking lot, staring at the letter. Harlan. I Googled it right there on my phone. Harlan Energy, major oil and gas company, holdings across Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and the CEO. Rebecca Harlan, age 42. Net worth estimated at over $300 million. My birth mother. My biological mother was an oil heiress, and my adoptive parents, who'd been cutting me out of some trust fund from Oklahoma, had known. They had to have known. That's why the paperwork was password protected, why they never told me, why they'd been so careful to keep me in the dark. They didn't just hide my adoption. They hid my inheritance. I dialed the number before I could chicken out. She answered on the second ring. Rebecca Harlan speaking. My voice cracked. This is Alina Martinez. I think you're my mother. Silence. Then, oh my God, Alina, is it really you? We talked for 3 hours. I sat in that parking lot until my phone battery hit 15%, and we were still going. Rebecca cried. I cried. It was a mess. She told me everything. How her parents, old money, super controlling, found out she was pregnant and shipped her off to some wellness retreat that was really just a place where rich girls went to hide their shame. How they arranged the adoption through a lawyer, made sure it was sealed tight. How she tried to find me every year after she turned 21 and finally got access to her trust fund. But they buried it deep, she said. Your adoptive parents, they made sure I couldn't reach you. My stomach dropped. They knew you were looking. The agency told me someone had requested extra privacy measures. That's not standard. Someone paid for that. Victor and Lydia, of course they did. They didn't just adopt me. They bought me. Made sure my real mother could never interfere with their perfect little family plan. Come to Tulsa, Rebecca said. Tomorrow, please. We have 25 years to catch up on. I drove straight there. Didn't even go home first. Her house, mansion, really, overlooked the Arkansas River. All glass and stone and money. The kind of place I'd designed logos for but never actually stepped inside. She answered the door herself. Dark hair like mine, same eyes, same hands. It was like looking at a version of myself that got to grow up loved. She hugged me so tight, I thought my ribs would crack. Over coffee in her massive kitchen, she explained the rest. Her parents had left everything to her when they died 5 years ago, but there was a clause in the will. If she ever found her biological child, me, half the estate would automatically transfer. We'd need DNA confirmation, she said. But Alina, we're talking about 50% of Harlan Energy, properties, investments, a trust worth over $150 million. The room spun. And I want you to have it, she continued. Not because of the money, because you're my daughter. Because I've spent 25 years wondering if you were okay, if you were happy, if you knew you were loved. I wasn't okay. I wasn't happy. And I definitely didn't know I was loved. But I was about to be. Comment below, would you take the money or walk away? The DNA test came back a week later. 99.9% match. I was officially a Harlan. Rebecca didn't just give me money. She gave me a purpose. Stay here, she said after the DNA results came through. Learn the business. You've got an eye for design. I saw your portfolio. We could use that. Rebranding, marketing, the whole thing. So I did. I stayed in Tulsa, moved into the guest house on her property, which was bigger than my entire Austin apartment building. Started sitting in on meetings, learning about oil and gas, supply chains, investments. And I didn't tell my parents a single thing. Radio silence. They called, of course, texted. Where are you? Are you okay? Sophia's wedding is in 3 weeks. I ignored every single one. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them feel a fraction of the abandonment I'd felt my entire life. Rebecca set me up with her lawyers. We filed paperwork to transfer my share of the estate, established Rebecca Harlan Designs as an LLC funded with enough capital to make it legitimate. Real clients, real contracts. My first big project? Rebranding a renewable energy startup Rebecca was investing in. Green energy, solar, wind, the future of the industry, and they loved my work. Paid me more for one logo than I'd made in 6 months of freelancing. It felt like breathing for the first time. But the wedding was coming up. Sophia's big day. The event she'd been planning for a year, this massive ceremony at some vineyard in Fredericksburg, Texas. 200 guests. Rehearsal dinner in a barn with string lights and a live band. Mom called one last time, left a voicemail. "Alina, please, I don't know what's going on, but you're still family. Sophia wants you there. We want you there. Don't let whatever this is ruin her special day." Her special day. Not we're worried about you, not we're sorry. Just don't ruin Sophia's day. I listened to that voicemail 3 times. Then I texted back, "I'll be there." Rebecca looked at me when I told her, "Are you sure?" "Oh, I'm sure," I said. "They want me at the wedding, they'll get me at the wedding." She smiled, not a happy smile, a knowing one. "Want some company?" I grinned. "Actually, yeah, I think I do." Subscribe before you miss what happens next, because this is where it gets good. We had 2 weeks to plan. And trust me, we made every second count. The rehearsal dinner was exactly as pretentious as I expected. Rustic barn venue, Edison bulbs everywhere, a cocktail hour with past appetizers that probably cost more than my old monthly rent, everyone dressed like they were auditioning for a country club catalog. I showed up in a simple black dress, nothing fancy. Rebecca came with me, equally understated in navy blue. Nobody recognized her at first. Why would they? She was just some woman I brought along. Mom spotted me immediately, rushed over with this relieved buttanoid expression. "Alina, thank God. We thought you'd actually skip your sister's wedding. Where have you been?" "Working," I said simply. Dad joined us, looked at Rebecca with polite confusion. "And this is?" "A friend," I said. "Let them sit with that." Sophia came over next, glowing in some designer rehearsal dress that probably cost thousands. She hugged me for show, obviously, and whispered in my ear, "Don't make this about you, for once." I smiled sweetly. Wouldn't dream of it. Dinner started. Bradley's family gave speeches about legacy and tradition and building futures together. Dad toasted the happy couple, mentioned how proud he was of Sophia's success, her dedication, her bright future. Didn't mention me once, naturally. Then the best man finished, and the coordinator asked if anyone else wanted to say something. I stood up. Mom's eyes went wide. Sophia's face turned to stone. "I'd like to say a few words," I announced, "to my sister and my family." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the projector they'd set up for the slideshow. "See, I learned something interesting recently," I said, pulling up the first image, the adoption papers. "I learned that I'm adopted, which, would have been nice to know before I turned 25. Gasps rippled through the barn. Sophia stood up. "Alina, what are you?" "But that's not even the interesting part," I continued, swiping to the next image. The emails between Dad and Sophia about cutting me out of the trust. "The interesting part is that you all knew, and you used it against me. Made me feel like I was never good enough when really you were just covering your tracks." Dad's face went pale. "Alina, this isn't appropriate." "Neither was lying to me for 25 years. I shot back. Then Rebecca stood up. "Hi," she said calmly, addressing the room. "I'm Rebecca Harlan, Alina's biological mother." The silence was deafening. "And I think we need to talk about Oklahoma oil rights." The fallout was nuclear. Turns out the family trust Dad kept mentioning, it was funded by mineral rights from land my biological grandfather, Rebecca's father, had sold to Grandpa Martinez back in the 70s. Rights that had a clause. If any direct Harlan heir was located, the revenue split would revert. Meaning half of what Dad thought was his legacy, legally mine. Sophia's wedding imploded. Half the guests left early. Bradley's family started asking uncomfortable questions about the Martinez finances. The engagement didn't survive the month. Mom and Dad tried to apologize later, called it a misunderstanding, said they were protecting me from confusion. I didn't buy it. I stayed in Tulsa, built my company. Last month, I landed a contract redesigning the brand for Sophia's old law firm, the one that demoted her after the scandal broke. She had to sit in the presentation meeting, had to watch me pitch, had to approve my invoice. The look on her face, worth every second of those 25 years. Here's what I learned. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. And some people, they never deserved you in the first place. If you're still not subscribed, drop a comment. What's your excuse? Because stories like this, they don't tell themselves. And trust me, I've got more to tell.